Hello. Welcome to our August conversation of women and blended families. My name is Gayla Grace. I serve on the Family Life Blended team, and our ministry is all about serving blended families. And today, the focus of our conversation is on back to school. It is that time of year, right? If you haven't joined us before, we're live the second Tuesday of every month on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube on the Family Life Blended page. We have a different guest each month with a different topic. Now, we are changing the time for our September live stream, and from then on, we are moving the time to 12 o'clock Central for the live stream. Now, of course, you can still watch the recording later, but we are wanting to serve our ladies better. I've heard that sometimes that afternoon slot that we're on is a little hectic, a little chaotic. So starting next month, we are 12 Central for our conversation. Now, before we get started, I'd love to know who's with me. It's fun to see you ladies who join us live. So if you're with us, tell me where you're from and maybe how you feel about back to school. I'm curious. Are you happy your kids are headed back to school? Are you sad? Let me know. Throw up a word in the comments and tell me. I'm just going to be transparent here and tell you that generally I was ready for our kids to go back to school. Y'all have heard before, we have 5 kids in our family. By the time we got to the end of summer, typically it was time. Kids needed to go back to school. It was a good thing, but maybe not. Everybody feels that way. Now, as we wait for our ladies to join us, be sure to tag a friend who you know would benefit from the conversation. Even if they can't join us now, they can always watch the recorded version later. And remember, you can always put a question in the comment related to our topic at any time, and we will do our best to answer your questions. So I have some ladies here. I have someone from Rhode Island. Well, that is pretty cool. I've never been to Rhode Island. I do want to go there. I have had a comment from a viewer in Florida who says, happy school is back. Yeah, I get that. I totally understand. And let me hear from some of the others. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you jumping up and down? What you feeling about back to school? And I'm going to introduce our guest. I am excited today to have Nan Deal joining me. Nan has a degree in early childhood education. She has retired from teaching with over 25 years experience, and it looks like she's happy about that. Nan taught in the public and private schools, and she has a lot of great knowledge that's going to help us today. Nan is married to Ron Deal. Okay, y'all know Ron. He's the guy who's written all those books on step family life that we love. And Ron and Nan have been married since 1986. They have 3 amazing sons, a precious daughter-in-law, a beautiful golden retriever, Willie, and a sweet grandson on the way. That's exciting, so exciting.
Yes.
And here's the part of Nan's bio that I really love. She says she's in love with Jesus, her Lord and Savior. Amen. I love that, Nan. Welcome to the live stream.
Thank you, Gayla, for having me. It is an honor to be here. I watch these every month.
Oh.
And so I'm honored to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And, I just have to say 25 years as a teacher, that's a lot, Nan.
Yes.
And I know that kids matter to you. You've advocated for them. You've looked out for kids and their well-being. I mean, it's far more than just academics. And so we're going to talk about that and the value of having a good school-home relationship in place. So, as we start, I'm curious, let's just talk about what does that mean? What does it look like to have a cooperative school-home relationship?
Well, let me just say today I am putting back my educator hat on, and it was in early childhood. So I was an elementary ed teacher.
Okay.
So I'm going to be speaking from those 2 hats. And also, I will have my mom hat on. Now, I'm not a stepmom, but I did have to advocate at times for my boys. And so I just think it's very important between home and school to have that solid communication all year long, not
Mhm.
just at Meet the Teacher Night and back to school. It's got to be all year long because there's so many different things that are going on throughout the school year. And there's so many things going on in a child's life in a year,
Right.
things that can pop up and happen. And so the
Mhm.
ways of communication have to be two-way and they have to be open.
Right. And when we talk about that being a cooperative school home relationship, I think as parents, certainly I have sat in that role as a parent, we have a piece to play in that too.
Mhm.
And we have to be willing to maintain our part in being cooperative with the school. And that's not always just teachers. I mean,
No.
sometimes it's if a counselor or an admin, somebody else is talking to us, then we
Mhm.
always have a role to maintain good communication with the school.
Sure. There's so many things at play. You've got an administrative team, you have secretaries that know a lot about what's going on in school,
Right.
especially if you come in late or you're needing to get a child out early. There's the nurse.
Mm,
There are your counselors. There are your coaches and your, you know, all of the extra, the music teacher, the art teacher. It's not just the core classroom teacher. Your child's going to be affected by a lot of adults in their life in that building, whether it is public or private. So, but your homeroom teacher is going to be that main one that you really need to communicate with.
right. And what would you say that parents and step parents can do to help create and maintain a cooperative relationship?
Mhm. Well, I think you've got to remember that a teacher has more than just your child.
Absolutely.
And an admin team, let's just talk about the school I was at. I had an administration that was servicing 1,000 children.
Wow.
That's 1,000 families
Right.
or more.
That's
If
what I was going to say. Really, it's probably more than 1,000
right,
families by the time you think about blended families.
right. And for me in the lower grades, I had 20 students or less. Upper grades are going to have 25 or more. You get into middle school and high school, and you have a teacher that's teaching
Oh,
math 7 periods times.
right.
Think about all of the children, all
Right.
of the needs, all of the family dynamics. So I
Absolutely.
think on both sides of the street, we don't know in a given day what's going on in that teacher's life, what's going on in that classroom, and that teacher doesn't know what's going on in your life
Right.
and in that home. So communication is so important. I mean, you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of the details, but if there is some custody issues or if there
Mhm.
are phone numbers that change or addresses or like in the past, I've had a student that was with mom one week and dad with one week, and it was so important that I knew on that weekend time or those evening times where they were going, what notes needed to go to whom. And so I just think communication is so important. Let us know where all those phone numbers are going, where the schedule is going, and emails and things. And if it changes, because then it can, I mean, Meet the Teacher Night is just that one drop in the bucket
At
of
the
meeting.
beginning. Right.
And that's really not the time to delve into all of that. It could be a separate time. You go up and say, "Hey, I just need to tell you a little bit more about our family and about this child and what's going on in our life."
Okay. Okay, I think that's interesting. So you're saying, but don't do it on Meet the Teacher Night
No,
because
there's
there's
too
just
much.
yeah. Okay.
There's too much coming out of teacher and too much going on.
Right.
So many things are happening. All those supplies are coming in. All that stuff is happening. And really, if you want to advocate for your child, just say, "You know what? In a week, I'd love to have a chat with you."
Yes.
Whether it's on the phone or let's do a Zoom. When can I do that? Because I need you to know some of the intricacies of what's going on in our life.
And so do you feel like most teachers are willing then to get on a Zoom call? Like if you want to really explain some situations, I feel like sometimes for us in step families, we don't know
Mm,
whether to ask for certain things. And are teachers going to be willing to go
mhm.
the extra mile
Right.
for that?
I know I did because I was educated. I really listened to my husband and I
Right.
listened to the things he was teaching me. I listened to the families in my classroom, but I wanted to do my best for each student in my
Right,
classroom. And I think by and large, you'll find teachers that are in the profession today, they are about the kids.
right.
It's not about the money.
Well,
They
we
are,
know that. Oh my goodness. You
yeah.
guys should be paid much more than you're paid.
Right, and so it is about the children, and it is about they're the why,
Right.
okay? And so and teaching them to learn things and, to be better human beings. But I would say for me, yes, I wanted to know. But at those times, meet the teacher night, it wasn't a night to have that conversation of, "How can I better serve you?" And that is the thing that I tried to do. I wanted to know how better to serve those students in those particular instances. I
Right.
mean, I've had students that have been being raised by grandparents. I've had students
Mhm.
being raised by aunts and uncles. I need to know the ins and the outs because I will see some of those behaviors coming out in the classroom. And
Yes.
I just think the more information you have, the more you know, the
Mhm.
better you can serve. And I
Right.
think too for parents, um, you've got and for teachers, I'm sorry, teachers, we've got to know that if we have 20, 25 students in our classroom, it's not just going to be from 7:30 to 3. There are going to be some times when we need to take that call after school or a time when we have to do that Zoom call at lunchtime, just so we can get that information to better serve those children. I think it just helps with the overall
Mhm.
school year for a
Mhm.
kid. I really
Mhm.
do.
Yeah. So what I really hear you saying, communication is key.
It is huge.
And I feel like for those of us in blended families, that probably is going to require some transparency. I mean,
Mm,
sometimes we like to keep our stories to ourselves. Maybe we're just more private or we just don't like to lay out everything. But
sure.
in the situation with the school, I think to better help our kids, there are times that teachers need to know, especially for the younger ones, when they're going back and forth from more than one home. I think it's helpful for teachers to
Mhm.
understand what those dynamics are. And it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Sure. And teachers need to use the tools that are at their disposal. They need admin to have their back. They need maybe a counselor to come
Right.
in and intervene. I mean, if you don't know, then you need to educate yourself.
Right.
I
Yeah.
really think you do. I
Mhm.
just think it's important that you know, and especially if there's legal situations
Oh, yeah.
involved,
Hmm.
or I mean, I could just tell you stories of times when a parent was not supposed to come up and take a child home and nothing was on the paperwork.
Oh, wow.
So that it's so important to the safety of the child, but
Mhm.
also you don't know unless you know.
Right.
And when things change mid-year, you've got to go in with, "You know what? This changed.
Yes.
This would better serve my child, daughter, or son, and I need to let you know this." We don't
Right.
know the intricate details, but we do you know what I mean? We do know how to serve those children.
Right. So don't give you all the dirt on our
Mhm.
stories is
Right,
what you're saying.
right.
Y'all don't
And I
need to
and I
y
don't think it's up to the child to have to carry that
no.
and say, "No, no, no, this is mama's week. No, 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 this is daddy's week." I think I've seen that a lot, and for the
Mhm.
littles, I've seen a burden on them that they just couldn't, and it caused stress.
Oh,
You could
yeah,
see the stress for
yeah,
sure.
right.
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
so what you're saying also is keep the forms up to date. So just
Yes.
because we fill out the forms at the beginning of the school year, when
Mhm,
things change, we
mhm.
might need to come back up there and
Sure.
or email or something just
Mhm.
to let people understand that dynamics are changed. And the truth is in blended families, that can happen. Things
Yes, it can.
do change, schedules change, and the better that we can keep the teachers informed, then the better off is,
Mhm.
what I hear you say.
Right, and there were times when, um, I had the stepmom come up at a different time, 2 families not wanting to really meet and greet at the same time.
Yes.
I've had people reach out to me and say, "It's for 2 hours, and I think this side of the family is coming from 5 to 6, and this side is coming from 6 to 7, and, hey, let's make it work. I wanna make it work for you," and I always tried too to have 2 sets of everything,
Wow.
and but that's elementary. I don't
Mhm.
know middle school and high school, how
Mhm.
that goes, but I just tried to make it and, I was always open. If people would ask, would they say, "Could you give us an extra set of this? I need 4, 1 for dad, I need 1 for stepdad, 1 for mom and stepmom." "Great, I can copy those off for you, just let me know how to get them to you. Because if
Right.
I put all of them in a backpack, I don't know how they're gonna get divvied up. So,
Yeah.
you let me know how I can serve you."
Yeah, and I think that's especially important with the littles, with those in elementary.
Mhm.
Maybe as our kids move through middle school and high school, they
Right.
can take a little bit more of that on themselves, but certainly we don't wanna be asking our elementary age kids to be doing that.
Mhm, to
Yeah.
carry that burden, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and so, let's talk about even I think about gifts, maybe Mother's
Mm.
Day or at Christmas. Have you ever had situations where kids wanted to make more than one or they expressed a need to not just take one home?
Yes, and that's when the copying for more than you have or getting for more than you have. I just for me, I just couldn't look a child in the eye and say, "No, this is just for mom, it's not for," or looking at them and they're making something and I can see the wheels turning going, "How do I split this Christmas present into?" To me, I just that's ludicrous.
Right.
There's 2 homes, so
Right.
2 things are going, and inevitably, they would just de-stress and go, "Oh," and then I'd say, "Okay, let's figure out how this one gets there, how's this one get there?" Maybe I'll send an email saying, "Working really hard on Christmas gifts, and they want to come to both homes. How do we make that happen? Can you help me in
Okay.
that?"
Oh, I love that. Okay.
But I've also come across some teachers that are like, "You're going the extra mile," and I really don't think, and I'm
Mm,
like, "Yeah, no, I'm gonna go the extra mile because that's what the child needs.
mhm.
This isn't about me,
Right.
you know? This is about the child."
Yeah. And I think that's what even as parents that we
Mm,
have to keep front of mind always is,
yes.
we don't want to make the school a battlefield. We don't want
Mhm.
to make the teachers and counselors have to be the ones to intervene because we don't handle things well ourselves.
Right.
And that is because it is about the kids. It's not
Mhm.
about us. And that's hard to do. We have to be the mature ones, right?
We do.
Yeah.
Gayla, I heard a long time ago from John Trent
Uh-huh.
and from Dr. Dobson. This is long ago in my early parenting, days. Both of them said, "You are your best advocate for your
Mm,
child for the rest of their life.
right.
You spend the most time with them, even though these 7 hours are gonna be in school or they're 4 hours with a coach, whatever,
Right.
you still are their biggest advocate." And I believe that.
Mhm.
I believe that.
Mhm.
I loved teaching. I was a good teacher, but those parents know those kids, and
Yes.
you know your kids,
Mhm.
and stepmoms and stepdads know these kids, and you know the ins and outs of what's going on in this blended home.
Right.
Especially a teacher like me who's never walked in those shoes. Yes, I wanna learn and I wanna educate myself, but parents help me.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you said that. Y'all
Mm,
want to understand things in the home. You want to understand the child better, but the
right.
parents are the ones that have to help you with that. Yeah,
Yes, for sure.
completely agree. Okay, so we've had a question come in here, Nan.
Okay.
What if the other home doesn't help the kids keep up with homework? So obviously, this is where
Mm,
many kids in blended families, they go back and forth. They live in 2 homes, and maybe one home is a whole lot better about helping with homework than the other home. You have any
mhm.
advice for that?
Wow, what a predicament,
Mhm.
and sorry for that child. Communication again, possibly speak to the, teacher without throwing the other family under the bus
That's good. Yes, that's
and
good.
say, we really work hard. Maybe it's a week to week or weekend.
Mhm. Right.
We really work hard with homework, but you may notice with Johnny that then the next week the homework doesn't get in or it's not being helped with. Is there any way at a time during the day or in the classroom where some grace can be given, or they can do it before, times when
Yes.
they're sitting in the hallway and they're waiting for that class to start, or at lunchtime and they don't want to go play don't want to
Mhm.
take their recess and their playtime away. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Advocate for them without throwing the other family under the bus, or maybe just give some grace.
Yeah. That's good, and I really like the, advice of don't throw the other family under the bus.
Because you can see a pattern. We get our homework done here. That we see you as a teacher and we know this is important. It's not being done here, or maybe allow the teacher to address that and say, I'm seeing a pattern. Week 1 it's getting done, week 2 it's not. How can I help you with that? How can
Yes.
we, you know?
Yeah. How can I help you? What a great way to
Mhm.
address it, to
Mhm.
let them know that you care and you're not trying to put them on the defense and you just wanna know.
Right,
Because again, we're going back to
right,
what is best for the child. Our
right.
kids go to school to learn,
They do.
and they need to have the freedom to learn without a bunch of drama
Mhm.
between homes and other stuff
Mhm.
going on. So,
And Gayla, they carry so much in their backpack,
yes, I know.
literally.
Right.
But as a teacher, I've seen students carry stuff in their backpacks that wasn't theirs to carry. And it
Mm.
really caused anxiety.
Yeah.
And really, in my years of teaching, the parents that could be a team for the child and lay aside their stuff for that child wasn't stressed.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, it just over and over, I could tell you stories.
Oh, I'm
And
sure. Mhm.
when they were working together, and as a teacher, when you see the okay, this weekend must have been a really hard weekend or a transition weekend, and they're switching from one to the
Yes.
other because they come in maybe with different behaviors and
Yeah.
things,
Right.
or they're not as uh, dysregulated, so to speak, because it was okay. But they carry that, and they carry that stress of whatever. I mean, all of our kids do whatever's happening in the car on the way to school, whatever's happening
Yes.
in their families,
Right.
and it's hard to then turn on that learning brain
Right.
and that child brain when they've got all of these adult things coming at them.
Right. Yeah. In fact, I read something just this last week where I think this describes what you're saying. Kids wear different backpacks to school with baggage they're carrying from life experiences.
Mm,
So everybody is wearing a different backpack. It has
mhm,
different experiences in it. And you, as the teacher, are trying to understand those experiences, what's affecting that child who's
mhm,
walking in the door, and then do the best you can to help that
mhm,
child learn despite what might be
mhm.
going on in the home.
Can I tell you a story?
Yes.
Well, I had a student, and we were getting ready to line up on a Friday. And I said, "Sweet girl, your coat is hanging up on the hook. You're gonna need that for the weekend." Yeah, it's cold weather.
Right.
And she looked at me and went, and I said, "No, baby, your coat's hanging over there. Go grab it and put it in your backpack too." And she was so stressed. It was like, "Don't you dare make me put that coat. I can't take that." And I went, "Oh." I said, "Did your stepmama buy you that coat?" She knew better than to take that coat home. And I said, "Baby, it'll be waiting for you next Monday. Don't worry about it." She didn't want to get in trouble for liking that coat or using that coat or whatever was going on with that coat.
Wow.
And I alleviated the stress for her. I said, "It'll be right there on your hook by your name." And she took a breath and lowered her shoulders and walked out, gave me a hug, and it was there for the next week. And that next week, when she was
Wow.
getting ready to go to that home, she grabbed her coat and off she went.
Wow.
She, at 5, already had those rules and that routine down.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm,
Wow, and just think about the stress that has been put on that little
mhm,
girl,
mhm.
of taking a jacket that the stepmom bought. She can't take that to her bio mom's house. That makes me
Mhm.
sad. But,
Yeah.
Good for you, Nan, and for teachers who are in tune enough with the kids to know what is going on
Mhm.
and to understand the behavior and why she
Mm.
could not put that jacket on.
That was the Holy Spirit, let me tell you. That was the Holy Spirit because that rack needed to be empty for Friday. I needed that stuff to go home, and it was like, "Wait a minute, I am seeing something else." So, no, there are really good teachers out there, some
Yeah,
really good teachers, and we do love your babies like
I
our own,
know. Right.
and yet we don't know what we don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. And here's another one that I have had come up before. What about having a separate parent teacher conference? I mean,
Mhm.
I can tell you that I wouldn't have wanted to have a
Sure.
parent teacher conference with a former spouse. And so,
Mhm.
how do you feel about that?
I'm open to it, and I've done it, and I've had them
Awesome.
together, and I've had them separate, and I just think if I'm about the child, then I need
Hmm.
to make time for that. I really
Yeah.
do. And, again, that's not my journey, that's not the avenue I've walked in, but I need to think about my student, and I need to think about the families that I'm servicing. I
Right.
but that's my stance on it. And
Yes.
so I want everyone to feel comfortable and be able to chat about what's best for this child.
Yes, absolutely.
You know?
Okay, we've had another question. What are some ways that you have seen stepmoms be successful with being involved without intruding on the bio mom's role? Now, I know we're stepping out a little bit. You don't live
Mm,
in this world, but you have worked in this world.
right.
So, how have you seen stepmoms be successful without intruding on the bio mom?
Advocating for another time to bring up birthday stuff. Oh, and letting
Oh,
bio mom take the precedence, but maybe can we do a different day? Um, Communicating about, like, Mother's Day. Is there any way that, we can do something another time?
okay.
School eating lunch with your child. I've seen them come at a different day or and when the rules are this way, okay, so all the M's go this week and, well,
Yes.
that child can't have both mom and stepmom. Communicate with me. Say, "This is very stressful for us. We need a different day. How can we make that work?" And inevitably you're going to find a time, but when it's those big field days and those big
Yes.
things, I've just seen them come I've seen them come at different times and do the first hour is us and the next hour is us. And I think giving the families enough information to say, well, it's from here to here, and this is what it's going to look like, you
Okay.
know.
Mhm.
But I think that is part of the communication again,
Yeah.
Gayla. I
Mhm.
would rather you talk to me more about what's going on and ask questions, um, so that I can help.
Yeah. Well, because the other thing I think about for you is then when you see the child begin to act out, you see behaviors that are out of the norm for that child,
Mhm.
then you can begin to try to figure out what might be going on and
Mhm.
even ask questions if the behavior escalates, because that's going to
Right.
affect their learning. That's going to
Mhm.
affect other kids in
Mhm.
that classroom. And so, again, the more that our teachers know about the child
Mhm.
and the family, then the better they can handle when behaviors go a little sideways, which happens.
Right. And I would try to give as much information as I could. I remember one year saying, "Here are all the field trips. Here
Mm,
are all the programs.
okay.
Here are the conferences. And if you have to, divvy this up, then I think you need to talk amongst yourselves to do that." Because,
Okay.
I had some that would say, well, she's going to do the fall thing, but I want to do the Thanksgiving dinner or whatever it is.
Okay.
If you cannot all together, but
Mhm.
I've seen it all together and it worked great.
And sometimes that does work great. And so
Sure.
we don't want to say that absolutely never everybody come together, because certainly
Right.
we had that happen some, and
Hmm.
just, put on your big girl pants and decide that it's going to be okay. It might be a little awkward. It may not be the way you want it, but
Hmm.
we can plow through and
Hmm.
again keep thinking about, for the sake of the child, I am going to be
Right.
the mature one and I'm going to handle this like I need to.
Sure. Here's another thing I would say, and I will draw on personal experience with my boys. We had a loss in the middle of the year, in the middle of the school year, when Connor
Right.
passed away in February. And for my other two boys, we've experienced teachers not advocating for them after the loss of their brother because the teachers just didn't know what to do.
Ugh,
It
right.
was
Yeah.
horrific.
Oh,
Ron and I were drowning, and our boys, especially Brennan, our 10-year-old, he needed to do half days for a while. And I had to go in and advocate. And um,
mm,
when things happen during the school year, that communication needs to be it's so vital.
right.
But also, I think as educators, if you haven't gone through something, I haven't gone through a divorce, I haven't gone through the blending, then I need to educate myself. I need to figure out what are my kids going through and how to better serve them. And I really wish these teachers would have just learned on grief. What do I do
Yes.
for these kids? How do I talk to them? What do I
Right.
say?
Right.
Instead of just completely ignoring it, because then it made it worse, and it made it worse for us and
Mhm.
in our home. And I will just say that was not a fun school year for
Oh my goodness, I can
on
imagine.
all fronts. But
Right.
I would say I felt like my kids were failed in some respects.
Yeah.
So I think
Mhm.
parents, educate yourself about the school.
Mhm.
Know who your teachers are, know who your admin is, know who the counselors are, and what do you have at your fingertips. And also know that they are a school of possibly 600 to 1,000. That's a
Right.
lot.
Right.
Try to maybe see it from their vantage point. And also, teachers, if you're a teacher on this, educate yourself on these kids. And if blending, divorce, court dates, things like that is
Mhm.
not in your wheelhouse, educate yourself.
Right. Yeah,
You
and
know?
thank you for sharing that about your son, and his brothers, because
Mhm,
I think there are things that are gonna happen in a classroom with kids that
mhm.
we haven't walked through, but it doesn't mean that we just ignore it, and
Exactly.
there's a school counselor there who
Mhm.
probably could help if you don't have
Yes.
any other access trying to figure it out, start with the counselor. I bet
Mhm.
that they could help.
Yes. I learned
Yeah.
a lot from one of my coworkers who was going through that,
Hmm.
and 3 kids, and I just listened to what she needed and how hard it was for her.
Right.
And, I never wanted to make a child feel like the problem lied with them,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's I just can not even imagine, the challenges of your boys after their brother
Mhm.
died, and,
Mhm.
just needing some additional
Mhm.
nurturing and all of those things.
Just like with kids going through a divorce or going through a
Yes.
hard time,
Right.
eh, they weren't eating, they weren't sleeping.
Oh, of course.
Especially Brennan, he was 10. He was sleeping beside our bed. He slept beside our bed for 2 years. He
Oh.
thought mom or dad was next, and he just had the most anxiety. There was no way that kid was gonna learn. It
Wow.
was just he needed grace,
Yeah,
and he
absolutely.
needed mercy.
Mhm.
And we needed someone to come and help us because we were floundering. And so,
Right.
um, I just think if you cannot be afraid of things that are going on
Mhm.
and learn and educate yourself and ask questions. And I
Yes.
know it's an astronomical task. You have 20 kids in there with 20 different family situations.
Mhm.
And yet, that's the job.
Well, and some of them are gonna jump to the surface. I mean, that's a pretty
Mhm.
big one that
Yeah,
you
for
described.
sure.
Yeah, and it kinda leads into a question we just had. What are some signs of anxiety in younger kids that I should
Mhm.
be on the lookout for?
I think, them not getting their homework in, or maybe behavior changes that are not
Yes,
in the norm.
I
That
agree, right.
behavior changes, maybe eating, bathroom behaviors. Trying to
That
think of older kids too, where they just kind of withdraw, and they change appearance.
Mhm.
Or I found out a lot of things in the journal. I know people are like kindergarten and journal, but if a child is drawing something, or they're
Yes.
wanting to act things out. When I had a home center, those kids will get on the phone and they just start talking like mom and dad, you know?
Right.
And so,
Mhm.
I think it is in behavior. It
Yep.
can be in eating, it can be in a change of appearance as well.
Right, and sometimes anger,
Mhm,
mad is really sad, and
mhm,
so when we see a child acting out, being mad, it could simply be that they're struggling with some deeper emotions than
mhm.
that, and
Or
it's pretty
withdrawing.
right. Yeah, especially as kids get older, and it's pretty
Mhm.
common. I mean, honestly, I feel like social media contributes to that's a conversation for another
Oh,
day, Nan.
yeah, don't get me started.
Yeah, right. But we do want to be on the lookout for these
Mhm,
behaviors. As behaviors change, it's
mhm.
signaling something, and we need to really consider it as parents.
Right,
Well, oh, go ahead.
I had kids that would immediately start going to the backpack, going to the backpack, going to the backpack, and I'm thinking, "Okay, I need to figure out what's in the backpack."
Oh,
And it may have been a
wow.
picture that they brought or a certain special something that was bringing them calmness and they just didn't wanna bring it out. I mean, it's just it can be anything that
Right.
changes
Right.
from the norm that you have seen.
Yeah. I totally agree. So as we wrap up, do you have any other thoughts or suggestions on how we as parents and step parents can help set our kids up for success as we start a new school year?
I do, and you're gonna think this is cliché, but pray.
Oh, that was mine. I was gonna say that. No, it is not cliche. I totally agree.
And here's the thing, it's not just pray at meet the teacher night or,
Yes.
"Yay, I got the
Yes.
teacher I wanted," or,
Right.
"I'm just gonna" it is praying the whole school year.
Yes.
It is praying on Monday for your teacher and Tuesday for the admin and Wednesday for knowing their schedule, what classes they're going through, not just for a test. It's praising God for the blessings that you
Mhm.
see. Thank
Yeah.
you for that conference and that we could have separate ones. It is seeing him work in your school
Mhm.
and just the it's just fervent prayer and it's not just one and done. It is 365 days. Does that
Right.
make sense?
It does, and I would even go so far as to say, if you can find a group of moms who you can pray with
Mm, mm,
together. I had a group in my neighborhood. We met at 6 a.m. on Thursday mornings,
I love
and
it.
we prayed for an hour, and we were done because then we
Mhm.
had to go get kids fed into school, and but prayer for our kids is huge. And then I think as we begin to do that at young ages, then we continue to pray for them as they get older, because the truth is
Yep.
problems sometimes get magnified with our big kids.
For sure, for sure.
And
Just don't stop after kindergarten. Keep it going.
oh
That's for
my
sure.
goodness, absolutely. I've loved that. Thank you for joining us, Nan. We
Oh,
so appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you bring to us as a former educator.
thank you. My pleasure.
Ladies, make plans to join us next month for our September live stream on September the 10th. Don't forget, our new time will now be 12 o'clock Central for the live stream. And I'm going to have Heidi Farrell joining me. We are going to talk about how to manage those busy households and sometimes those overwhelmed emotions that show up. And if we have time, we're also going to talk about the subject of an hours baby. Heidi and I both have an hours child, and just information about that. Also, registration is open for our summit on step family ministry. Will take place on October 10th and 11th in Dallas. This event is geared toward equipping the church to minister to blended families, and we bring together leading voices in the field of step family ministry. Our theme this year is Great Expectations. You can find all the details at summitonstepfamilies.com. Ron and I will both be there, and we would love to meet you and see you there, or perhaps you know someone else who is in a pastor or a lay leader role. Just tell them about it. Now, be sure that you're following Family Life Blended on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Have your notifications turned on so that you know when we go live. I love to have you join me live every month for our conversation. God bless you, ladies. Thank you for joining us today. And as we move into a new school year, let's stand on Philippians 4:6 and 7. It says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, With thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. That is a promise, ladies. So keep pressing on, and I will see you next time.